Hello, hello, and welcome to the Your Creative Mind podcast. I'm your host, Izolda Trakhtenberg. Today, I got an object lesson in remembering divorce. And I know that's a sort of a strange thing to remember, but there it is. I've been doing this long-term sub-gig, and the kids are incredible. The students are incredible. The teachers are great. The administration has seemed really lovely. And let me explain what's going on. The administration let me believe it was possible that I would be coming back next year. I would do a mixture of science and art, and I love that gift. Love, love, love. I love teaching marine bio to artists. What can be better than that for someone like me who sits really at the crossroads of science and art? That's who I am. That's what I do. And yet now I'm hearing, oh, we're not sure what our science needs will be next year, which a lot of things change between the end of one school year and the beginning of the next. So I am not, I'm not taking this personally at all, but they're not offering the course I'm teaching right now. They're not offering at all. And I think they're going to be offering astronomy, which is also awesome because I could teach that too with both hands tied behind my back. I'm a star and NASA nerd from way back, and I worked at NASA for many years. So I could easily do that. But I guess the thing is that I had been sort of relaxing into this job. Even though the commute is hellacious, sometimes it's 40 minutes, sometimes it's an hour and a half, depending on what the trains are doing. And I would love a commute that's like 10 minutes. Honestly, that would be really nice. Because, the train is sometimes hazardous to my mental health. Anyway, so there I am. I'm starting to relax, and it's beginning to feel happy instead of stressed, and stressed that I don't have enough money to live in my favorite city, but also the most expensive city in the world. And I honestly believe that unless you're uber rich, you probably also stress about money when you're living in the most expensive city in the world. And hell, I bet you a lot of us stress about money no matter what city we're living in. These are the signs of the times, right? And don't get me wrong, I have enough to survive on. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's not even money. That's not even the issue. It's belonging, I guess. I guess that's it. When you get the job of whatever kind it is, someone chooses you. Someone says you are the person I think can do the best job. I think you can be the person who does this. And it's kind of petty, but it's also kind of a narcotic, I guess. And it's interesting, like, oh, that being chosen feeling is wonderful. And then you have to go, okay, what am I being chosen for? Is it actually good for me? And so these are all the thoughts that are sort of racing in my head, running around, chasing each other around in my head all week. And what I thought was going to be one of those I was chosen situations turns out it's not going to be one of them, as I found out from one of the APs, the assistant principals. And I got to tell you, that took the wind out of my sails. It really did. And also just sort of going, okay, they didn't choose me. And I don't know the reasons, and I don't think the reasons really matter because that's how things are, truthfully. And I have some teachers who are going, oh no, we're going to make sure you're back next year, which is lovely. But what matters to me is not, did they choose me to stay next year, or will they choose me to stay or go next year? That isn't the important thing. What matters to me is getting okay with whatever happens. Getting away, I don't know why I said that. Getting okay with where I am. Noting for myself that, most importantly, I have to choose myself. And further to the point, while I love science and I can and will do the science no problem, I'd rather be in the art category. And this is not to say that I don't love to teach science. I love to teach science. I love putting art and science together. I love making it possible for students who are afraid of science to run towards science, to enjoy it. But honestly, it's not even that. I'm sort of winding around the point instead of getting to the point. But I'd gotten to the point where I needed a kind of a break from being a business owner, from being an entrepreneur. And as I said to my husband in a text today, part of what my issues had been for a long time is that every time I took time off from my business or my art that is business, as someone who owns their own business or is self-employed, I felt guilty. And I don't know if you can relate to this if you own your own business, that anytime you take time off that you could be spending on your business, you feel like you should be doing that instead of enjoying your time off. And maybe it's just me, maybe it's my immigrant work ethic, I don't know. But something, and I love that notion of immigrant work ethic because that's part of what's going on here. I'm sure that it got drilled into me very young that you work hard and you work harder than anybody else. And even when you're done, you keep going for the next thing rather than resting on your laurels. Yeah. So when I started subbing, when I went, you know what, I need a little bit of a break and I'm going to just do something that is a little bit more regular. It's not 9 to 5, it's 8 to 3 or whatever it is. But the interesting thing is that when I started subbing, I started feeling like I was putting in full days. And that meant that instead of feeling guilty that I wasn't working 24/7 on my business, I started feeling like my time off was mine. It was mine to keep rather than, oh, you could be doing X, you could be doing Y. I kind of took a little break. I made this podcast bi-weekly instead of weekly, although I recognize that this episode is coming out only a week after the last one, but it's because of what I'm going to be talking about later and because it's a timely, time-sensitive issue. But regardless, when I have a legitimate position, I feel like even though something is not mine permanently, because my business is my business, my freelance stuff is my freelance stuff, if you're not working on it, you're not getting paid. And I know that the best goal for me would be to get passive income, which is what basically happens when you have something in place that makes money for you while you sleep. And I love that, but that's not what's going on with my business right now. So what was going on with the subbing is that I felt like, oh, I was tired. I felt like I'd put in a whole day. And that means that if I want to rest, I've earned the rest. And if I want to create, I create. I mean, nobody can make me feel guilty because I put in all day working my ass off. And there's a psychology in there, maybe even a pathology that I need to think about. So what it's gotten me thinking about is what's the next step? And what I've realized is that if they asked me to stay into next year, then I would have said, yes, I'm jumping on it. But now I'm going to have to think about it because I don't feel like I'm a priority to them. And I get it, nor should I be when they have an entire school to run. But the question then becomes, why am I making them a priority for me if they're not making me a priority for them? And as I said, I get it. They have a school to run, but I love these words. Never make someone a priority when they treat you like an afterthought, or never treat someone like a special guest star when they treat you like a walk-on extra, right? So there is something to that for me to learn from. And this is not to say, as I said, that they owe me anything. They don't. But I guess the thing that I'm thinking about is that I have a great rapport with the students and the teachers. And the thought went through my head when I found out that they weren't going to pay me for the time that I had been and would have to be putting in, because I'm essentially creating a curriculum for marine biology for artists, was that they should have fought for me. And that's a weird thing to think because, again, they don't owe me anything. And objectively, I know that. But just being honest, that is went through my head. And as I said, I'm sort of striving for or aiming for, streaming is the word that almost came out of my mouth. I'm striving for radical honesty on this show because I want you to know, as a creative entrepreneur, as an artist, as sometimes a worker bee, where I am and maybe what lessons you can glean from what I'm going through. So, what am I going to do? If they don't offer me a permanent or long-term position, what I've realized is that's okay. I'm going to be asking to be nominated for a full-time vendor by the principal for the city of New York. And then I can go and do my assemblies and programs at 10,000 different public schools in New York City, not just a couple of hundred children. And this is not to say that I don't love these kids. I do. The kids are amazing, and some in particular are incredible. You're going to hear amazing things from them as time goes by. Yet, if I can get a nomination out of this, as well as money for a few months, that leaves it so that I feel really good about going into the summer, knowing that I did right by all the students I work with, and I can spend the entire summer both resting and writing. And I'm okay with that, right? Because if I get a nomination and I can start doing my Earth Lady assemblies again, then wow, that's a really cool thing. That is something that I can bring to the schools everywhere. And we'll see how that all works, because there's a time lags for all of that. Bureaucracy and I are not great friends, as you well know. But I also have other businesses. I have this show, I have my tarot reading business, I have my writing business, I have other things. But damn, I love to teach. So it's an interesting conundrum, because the biggest answer, or actually the biggest question that I'm trying to answer, is figuring out how to be okay with belonging to myself instead of being chosen by someone else. Here's what I'm thinking about. I have a key to the bathroom and a fob for the elevator that gets me to the 9th floor, or whatever I need, which is where the school is. And that is fantastic. So not having to beg either at the office or a random teacher walking by for that stuff is really nice. And that's it's a weird thing, but it makes my life so much easier to know that if I need to use the elevator, that I can, that if I need to go to the bathroom, that I don't have to wander and find a teacher to let me in. I know it's strange, but those are sort of the hallmarks of me feeling like I am part of a place, is that I am in the consistent running of the place rather than someone who's going, can you please let me into the bathroom so I can relieve myself? Anyway, that's where I am with it. But this also becomes a lesson for me in staying flexible and relaxed about the things that I need to do come this summer or next year. And there's something really powerful about that too. And I'm going to keep you updated on what's happening. But right now, I kind of needed 15 minutes of not thinking about my other businesses and just focusing on teaching. And now I'm going to go do something else, and that is great. And if they ask me to stay at this point, I'm going to have to think about it, because I can feel my gears shifting. And I don't know if this happens to you, but to quote Yumi Zhang, my amazing acupuncturist from days gone by, if not this door, another door. And I think I've talked about this in an episode recently about the Michigan State Honors Choir. When I felt the door close on getting into both the SATB, the mixed choir, and the all-women's SSAA choir, even when I found out I could only get into one and I had gotten in, my feeling of disappointment did not end. The gears had shifted, and it didn't change my mindset. It's just, I had already gone to a place where I was not happy, and no matter how hard I tried to get thrilled with having gotten into SSAA, I couldn't let go of, but why wasn't I in both? Which is so bizarre, because there was no possibility of being in both. You could only get into one, but it didn't matter. In my head, my brain lives, I guess, in funny ways. I still felt a little bit let down, even though there was no reason to be let down, because I had won. I had gotten in to one, and that's all you could do. You could not get into two. They would never choose a person to do two. And I was still like, So bizarre. Anyway, sticking sort of with radical honesty, my business for the summer is that I'm going to try really hard to get work done on a bunch of books and plays and things that I want to do. And I have to, or I get to, I'm trying to still do that. I get to expand the functional tarot book because I have a whole new suit that I need to write about and include in the book. I mean, how amazing that I get to do that as part of my summer. I get to release the second edition of the book that's going to have the suit of voices in it. And I have 3 books and I have 2 plays and a musical. 3 books, 2 plays, 1 musical that I'm working on this summer. That is my goal, and there it is. But what I've really figured out about this is that I need to focus on choosing myself instead of waiting for anyone else to pat me on the head and say, "We choose you." That has to be, I think, part of the creative's mindset and also part of the entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, because we have to choose ourselves. No one is going to choose us for us. We have to choose ourselves. And maybe I'll make that a mantra in my morning meditation. I do one every morning, and I think I choose myself is going to need to go into that rotation, because if you don't choose yourself, how can you ever expect anyone else to choose you? That's it. That's the question. So if you decide to try it too, if you decide to try to add that into your morning meditation or whatever it is you do as your part of your morning routine, maybe while you're brushing your teeth, just going, "I choose myself, I choose myself, I choose myself." Let me know how it goes. Let me know how you feel after you've done it for a while, okay? I would love to know. Okay, moving on. I'm also seeing a bunch of shows. And last night I saw Becky Shaw. And tonight, and tonight I saw Cable Street. And as usual, I'm going to give you my take on the shows, or sort of what creative psychological insights I can get from each. So let me talk about Becky Shaw for a minute. This is another weird psychology thing. This is a revival, and it stars Patrick Ball from The Pit and Madeline Brewer from The Handmaid's Tale. She's the titular character, and Alden Ehrenreich, Lauren Patton, and Linda Emond round out the cast. And I think what struck me about the show, and it's a weird family thing. Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. I'm going to spoil the show, so stop listening now if you don't want the show spoiled. Although you should come back to hear my review of Cable Street, because what a powerful show. Anyway, but one of the characters in the show is damaged. Every other person is also damaged in their own way, but Max is damaged because no one chose him. Ding, ding, ding. I sense a theme. And in fact, his family didn't choose him, and he's hardened on the outside, and he does not want to put up with anyone who isn't in his sphere to love. If you're in his sphere to love, he will go to the ends of the earth for you. Does that sound familiar? Abused children everywhere, take note. But if you aren't, he doesn't really care about you. And he's made that delineation for himself, and he wants to defend it. And I think that in the show, he's meant to be an asshole. But I kept going, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And maybe there's something very wrong with me that I didn't think there was anything wrong with him going, my boundaries are clear. This is who I love. These are the people I consider my family. And the other people in the world, they're okay, but they're out there somewhere, and I don't owe them anything. They are not my responsibility. But the people who are my responsibility, I will defend and I will do for until the ends of the earth. That's my take on Max. And what's interesting about this, and again, spoiler, 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 the big thing is, as I said, he desperately wants to be chosen. And even though the family who chose, quote unquote, chose him, depends on him for everything, especially money matters, and to take care of all the logistics and all the organizing, in the end, when it comes to who they choose to be with, who they choose to love, it isn't him. So his role in the family is to take care of them, but he's never going to be chosen. He's never going to be one of theirs. When it comes to a moment, I have a fork in the road, and I can either be with you or I can let you go because someone else has said I have to let you go. They let him go, yet they still expect him to do for them. And that's one of these radically unfair things that makes me bananas. And that was my role in my family too, actually. I was the one who was supposed to be responsible at a very young age, and I had to fix everything. And I had to be the responsible one. As I said, I wrote my parents' legal and binding divorce agreement when I was 13 years old on lined paper from a school notebook. Because my parents were babies. They were immature brats, abusive immature brats, but with a lot of power because they were adults in the eyes of the law, but they were ultimately immature brats. And I was the one at 13 who wrote up their divorce agreement. I should really write a play about this because some of it is just freaking outrageous. But anyway, the point is that I was watching this show. I was watching Becky Shaw, and I got out of it things probably the playwright did not intend you to get out of it. I don't know if I was supposed to love any of the other characters. I didn't. They were all ugh. But I loved Max, and I felt for him for how lost he was, for how much he wanted, how much he didn't have, and how much he had lost, and was still trying to keep it together for the people he loved, who he considered his family because his actual biological family were no longer available. And that whole thing of choosing himself, if I could have been a fly on that wall with a megaphone, I would have said, choose yourself, Max. Choose yourself, especially with the very last 3 seconds of the play. Don't choose the crazy. Whatever you do, do not choose the crazy. Even if the crazy looks like it will be a balm to your shattered spirit, do not choose the crazy. Okay, let me talk about Cable Street. This is a musical brought over from the UK, and it was inspired by the true story of the Battle of Cable Street that took place in London's East End on October 4th, 1936, when 100,000 Jews, Irish workers, and communists blockaded the road against Oswald Mosley's British Union of Fascists' march into the heart of the East End. It's at 59 East 59th, and you should run, not walk, before it closes on May 16th. Go see this musical. First of all, the choreography was outstanding. The singing was amazing. The songs, the harmonies, the fact that this musical has embraced harmonies is so fabulous. I've seen so many musicals in the last 5 years that do a lot of unison singing or a lot of solos, but they don't do a lot of let me sing in multi-part harmony and bring it to everybody, to all corners of the stage. It's just amazing. Love, love, love. Or to quote Project Hail Mary's Rocky, amaze, amaze, amaze. I mean, there were standout performances. The leads were incredible. Everything about this show was just wow. And honestly, the amount of energy they brought and how they were able to sort of contain all of that energy on a really small stage, it was amazing. They did so much with very little as far as stage and staging and set design, costuming. A lot of the actors played multiple roles. Everybody played multiple roles, I think. It was just brilliant. I don't know what else to say. And it was interesting. I was walking back to the subway, and I heard two people who had obviously been to the show talking. And one said to the other, "That was so unrealistic. I can't believe that they did that. So fantastical, not realism at all." And I was like, interesting. This is someone who's very far removed from the events of World War II and the Holocaust and the millions of people whom the fascists killed. So it was interesting to me at the very end to sort of walk out and hear that take. My take is that it's a powerful and brilliant, and you should go see it. And that's that. All right. I hope that you've enjoyed this tumultuous episode of the Your Creative Mind podcast. I'll be keeping you posted. I'm seeing other shows in the next few days. I will review them and see what kind of psychology and psychological insights that hopefully are helpful to you I can glean from every show. This is Izolda Trakhtenberg for the Your Creative Mind podcast, reminding you, as always, to be curious, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Izolda Trakhtenberg and is copyright 2025. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope.